maybe we'll take a little bit of a different twist. For those that do Camp Advantage regularly, you know, we always talk about what's going on in real world issues, contracts. If you can't find a topic, I'll give you a topic we can discuss. This is always something. I still think the Binzer is the biggest issue that we deal with, problems. You've always heard me say that it's very difficult to respond to illegal, improperly asked question. How do you respond to that on the Binzer? And it's really difficult. And I think that is the crux of everything that we do. I think there's no question that's where we earn our money, and I think that's the biggest issue on a contract. It's no longer dealing with close of escrow. It's no longer dealing with, you know, the price, and it just isn't. And there's a lot of, I think, it's not even so much that there's misinformation out there, because it doesn't make a difference if it's misinformation. If a buyer's agent does it wrong, and listen, quite frankly, we're not doing it correctly all the time either. Right? So I'll give you one example, and I'll give you a solution to it, and then you tell me what's going to move on. The idea behind the Binzer is that it doesn't change the terms of the contract. It's the only reason for the Binzer is it's for a buyer to investigate what they're buying, to understand and learn what they're buying. And any items that they may disapprove on an inspection, it gives this, they can disapprove and ask the seller to make corrections. The toilet's leaking, the air conditioner's not working, there's a broken tile, the toilet's whatever, right? But it's not designed to change the terms of the contract. So, for example, it'll say, you know, I'll send Frank an email that says, the toilet's broken, fix the GFI, we need a water spigot, the pressure valve is not working, and all these things need to be done by a licensed electrician or a licensed plumber. Okay? Sounds pretty reasonable, but you can't ask for a license, you can't, because the contract already says that it'll be done in a workmanlike manner, and not everything requires a licensee to do it. So the question is, Frank says, yeah, my seller will do it, but we're not doing it by a licensed contractor.
What if it's over $1,000?
That's the handyman law, right? So the law already says it has to be done by a licensed person. So Frank says, Sandy, my guy will fix the XYZ, but it's not gonna be by a licensed contractor. It'll be in a workmanlike manner, you know, as per the contract. And my buyer says, that's not acceptable. If you're not gonna do it by a licensed guy, I'm canceling the deal. The question is, can I cancel it based on that? Pick a side and we're gonna have a fight, right? I would say you can't, but we'll have a fight. I'm telling you, we're gonna have a fight. And if the buyer wants out and we should win that argument that the buyer is in, the buyer will find another reason to get out. So it's hard to do that. If Frank says, Sandy, use a licensed electrician for this, and I say, yes, we will, then I have to do it. Right? Because I agreed to do it. Even though it changes the terms of the contract, you've agreed to do it. And the reason behind that is if you went to a judge, the judge doesn't know a Binzer from a Spuds. He just knows that you asked for something by this, with these words, I agreed to do it in those words, therefore it needs to be done in the same words. Right? So that's really how it's coming down the pipeline. We also know that on the Binzer, you get one bite of the apple, right? So you can't, so my attitude is, if you did it wrong, I'll give you a chance to redo it. Frank says, Sandy, in lieu of any repairs, here's the home inspection, in lieu of any repairs, go fix the, give us $1,000 credit. It's wrong, you can't do that, right? We all acknowledge that. Here's my suggestion. If your seller is okay with giving $1,000, then just give them the $1,000 and move on. Right, just keep the ball moving to the goal line, right? Because you want to be right, you want to be smart. Just move the ball rolling. But if your seller's not willing to give $1,000 and he wants to make those repairs, I would go back and say, Frank, can you just go back and give me a chance to remedy something? Because otherwise it's wrong.
And I think the misunderstanding that happens through text messages and emails is brutal. So I think a conversation with a recap via text or email, in a lot of those cases, alleviates a lot of misunderstandings.
And you've heard me say this speech before, I'm not immune to any problem, right? I'm a practicing realtor just like you guys are. I have a deal go which is the most unusual, I can even tell you, for those I told yesterday, my seller is really good friends with the buyer's agent. They used to work together in the real estate business, and they even know, seller even knows the mortgage lender for the buyer. The buyer's agent has been communicating directly with my seller.
Because they're friends.
The they made the deal, they did the. So I keep saying to my seller, if you're okay with it and you're comfortable, I'm okay with it. As long as it moves the ball, I'm okay with it. But the minute you're not comfortable with it, you just tell me and I could put a stop to it, right? So it's wrong, we all know it's wrong, but we're just moving the ball. We're just moving the ball, so
Giving
why?
the buyers and sellers what they want.
So why make, you want to be right or smart, like I said, so why make that an issue? So last time we came to an agreement on our Binzer, which was kind of complicated, but if we're moving the ball, who cares? That's my point, who really cares in that sense? So I just become the paperwork after they make their deal, I'm just doing the paperwork and I'm okay with that. As long as my seller's okay with it, then I'm okay with it. But the minute he's not comfortable talking about something, then I'll get back involved. So, all right, so that's my 2 cents. What do you weren't here yesterday, so what's going on in your world? What do you got going?
Well, Zeno knows we were in a shitstorm yesterday, or was it the day before?
Day before, yeah.
This, interestingly enough, we had a scenario that certainly is going to come up again, I'm sure. But I've got a gal who's got she doesn't have leukemia, she's got a blood disease, and so she's needing to sell a condo. It's a smaller condo, and can't buy a smaller condo because now medical bills are eating her up. And so what happened was, things are going well. We've got a great agent on the other line. We actually have a good lender on the other line. Zeno's handling my client. And really the only hang up that we have at this point was getting through the appraisal on the listing side, my seller's house. So we get an appraisal. You guys remember we met with Jay Joseph? One of the things I love that he said was, he said, ask them if they're location competent. So when we got the appraisal, when I talked to the lender, I said, I want to ensure that we have a location competent appraiser. And I'll tell you why. This is a Scottsdale condo. It's not a big condo, and it's going to be more expensive than if you saw this same condo in Gilbert or Glendale or something like that. I don't want somebody coming from that area who can't make the adjustment to Scottsdale pricing. She said, well, I'll let them know and kind of pre-interview them, but obviously we don't have much to do with that, which I certainly agree with. So when the appraiser called, I kind of did a little bit of he sounded young, and so I did a little bit of an interview with him without being insulting. Just kind of, kind of wheedling, and I thought, okay, he seems like he doesn't maybe know as much about that complex. However, when I told him that I would have comps for him and stuff like that, he seemed appreciative rather than the typical, I don't need anything, don't worry about it, I've got it all covered, that kind of thing. So I put a package together for him. One of the things that I've noticed since I've been here in Scottsdale that has a big impact on values, especially in townhome and condo complexes, is the location of the unit can have 3 to 5% effect on prices. So for example, one of the comps we had, we were at 222.5, one of the comps we had was at 219. I was concerned about it until I looked and I saw that the deck actually overlooks the parking lot and the covered parking and a trash can, and that kind of thing. And we were in the central part of the complex that had, overlooked the clubhouse, this big open space, and that kind of thing. So what I did is I took a map and I circled all of the comps in the complex, and it did show that the ones in the center were actually a little more pricey than the ones on the perimeter. So met him in person, as I usually do anyway, and I gave him all the comps. He was very appreciative. He was a young guy, and he listened to what I had to say. And so what happened was, when he left, my seller was walking in, and I said, David, if there's anything else I can provide to you, let me know. Here's my card. If you have a question on any of the comps, anything like that. And he said, absolutely. This is what he said. This was his parting words. He goes, Frank, I have all the data should be a slam dunk. And he goes, and I will call you if I'm having any issues with anything. So I said, fantastic. 10 o'clock the next morning, I get a call from the other agent. Holy crap, Frank, we got a problem. Appraisal's in low.
So much for a slam dunk.
I went, what? Holy crap. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. And so here's where I think as agents, we have, not only do the appraisers have to be location competent, as agents, we have to be location competent. Because, a lot of us have I listed in properties here that I'm not 100% familiar with the neighborhood? Yeah. And I know how to pretend because I've been in the business a long time. However, in this case, I said, can I see that appraisal? And she sent me the appraisal, and I poured over the appraisal, and I went, I have no idea where this guy's coming from. Not only could we have appraised this based on the comps I gave him at 222.5, we could have, I could appraise this at 225 to 230 all day based on these comps. Where in the world is this guy coming from? And why in the world didn't he call me? And why would he say it's a slam dunk deal? So anyway, called Zeno because we're proceeds. We have proceeds.
How much lower did it come in?
2,500, which pretty much killed two deals, not one, killed two. Because then she's so skinny on her proceeds, she needs that for down payment. We just blew the down payment. So anyway, so I'm calling Zeno, I'm going, Zeno, I need your help. We need to look at some options. Zeno's going, Frank, I can help in any way possible other than down payment. We gotta have proceeds. So anyway, and of course in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not gonna let this deal die. I'll come up with, this was a referral from one of the top agents in Colorado Springs. I'm not gonna let this thing die. If I have to come up with $2,500, I'll do it. I'm not gonna just give it up without checking around to see who's willing to participate. So anyway, we go through this crazy thing. Zeno was right in there. Kudos to you because he calmed my seller down because he's owning her as a buyer. And you could tell she was frazzled as heck.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's about 6:30. I wasted a whole day on this. And I'm at home and I'm thinking, wait a minute. This makes no sense. I have comps that would show that support a value to 230. He told me that it's a slam dunk. He told me that he would call me if there's a problem. And I'm going, what was my original offer? The original offer was 220. Guess what the appraisal came in? 220. So
You didn't see the.
I texted the lender and I said, I've got a question for you. Can you call the appraiser, or I will? I need to know whether he got a copy of that counter. So she said, oh shit, let me check. She calls me 7:30 the next morning. She said, Frank, she said, he didn't get a copy. I talked to the appraiser. He thought that the value, the original contract at 220 was the price. And I said, well, y'all got some fixing to do, and very fast. And they did. But the funny thing was, as we talked about meeting our appraisers and kind of doing, it still blows me away that somebody says, here's my CBS code, go appraise the house, with as many appraisal problems as I've had here. And I had just gone through with Colleen.
So they changed the sales price?
They changed the
Appraised
appraisal.
value.
They amended to value. But the thing is I always look at that and I go, what could I have done different? So Colleen's the one that helped me before she left to Hawaii. I said, I want to show you how to prepare an appraiser package. And what was the first thing I said to her? I said, above everything else, put a copy of the contract and put the last and final counter with the final sales price and circle it or highlight it.
Yeah.
Guess what I didn't do? And it stung me.
Well, I'm glad it worked out, but I got to tell you, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
The whole thing is bullshit. So all of a
So
sudden,
typical,
you got a different
right?
piece of paper and the value changed on the house.
Right.
Yeah.
The whole,
It is,
you heard my comment about when Jay Joseph made a great presentation, the whole appraisal process is just flawed.
It absolutely
Yeah.
Flawed.
It's terrible.
And you know what, I wish they would just call it a justification of sales price.
Right.
Right.
it really is.
they're not praising it, they're just justifying that the value is a fair market
Can I get it to
value.
here?
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that terminology.
That's what they're doing. They're not appraising it, they're just justifying the sales price.
I
Bank,
like
this is
that
a fair market,
terminology.
and listen, and since you like it, I'll go one step further. I've always said,
Was there-
appraisers should, there should be a range. An
Okay,
appraiser should come back and say, this house has a fair market value of 220 to 225, and anything in that range is fair market value. Because now the difference is, who wanted to sell it or buy it more, who's a better negotiator? And quite frankly, whether their terms and conditions, concessions, has nothing to do with the value.
Yeah.
That has to do with the people's, listen, if you listed it for free, or you listed it at 10%, that doesn't change the value.
Right.
And neither does 1%, no percent concessions, or 5% concessions. It doesn't change the value. The value is the value. So kudos to you. It just, and listen, and I always quote, your guy, everybody knows Bill Gray. Bill Gray has a great line, I never forgot for years and years and years. There's always one more move. There just is. You just didn't let it die. There's always one more move.
Yeah.
And you did it, so.
Yeah,
good for
and
you.
I love that, because the one thing, no matter how many times I tell a buyer, you guys, you got a great deal on the house. The sales price was $350, I think market value on the house is $380. Please expect that the appraisal is going to come in at $350. Well, why? I'm paying $500 for it. And I said, yeah, but that's perfect terminology, so no matter how many times you tell them, the appraisal comes in at $350, and they're like, that's kind of disappointing.
And if it
It's
comes
like,
to-
didn't I just tell you
And if
that?
it comes in at 355 or 360, then they're doing really well, because even that, the appraisers are being very considerate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Listen, I have a question for you. You are the listing agent, okay? You're the listing agent, and we're doing a deal. And I'm the buyer side, and I call you and I say, Frank, hey, good news, let's know the appraisal came in at value, it came in and satisfied the lender's needs.
Mhm.
What do you say?
Great.
Great, and hang up and say thank you.
Yep.
What do you say?
I don't ask any questions, I don't wanna know.
In my opinion,
Yeah,
never ask the appraised value, never. This is just my take, because there's nothing good that can come out of knowing that. As you're the listing agent, there's nothing good that comes out of that question,
Right.
because
It's a box that needs to get checked, it got checked.
hey, seller, Leanne, good news, the appraisal came in, it satisfied the buyer's needs, let you know, we've now satisfied the home inspection, now we satisfied the appraisal contingency, just let you move on.
Right.
And you say,
Great.
As a buyer?
no, you're my seller, hey, Leanne, just let you know, the appraisal came in and came in and satisfied the lender, so that is no longer a contingency in our deal.
Well, I just, the sellers usually ask what it came back.
That's what
at.
they ask.
Yeah.
And if you say, they don't really tell me, because it's none of my business, they just tell me that it's satisfied, you're giving them an honest, truthful answer.
Yeah,
But now that she tells you, the lender tells you, yeah, it came in at, what's your sales price, $350? It came in at $360. And now you ask the question,
We didn't make, we lost 10,000, could we have gotten the 10,000?
I don't know. I don't need to tell my seller that we sold it at $350 when the appraisal came in at $360. So I just don't ask. There's no good that comes out of it. And if I know it's $360 and they ask me and I say I don't know, then I'm really lying. I just don't wanna know. I don't need to know as a listing agent what the appraisal came out. It just doesn't do you any good. That's my opinion, so, anyway.
You can get a copy of that appraisal if the deal falls, so. through-
That's something different. It comes in lower, that's different. If it comes in lower, that's a little different. Listen, who was with me yesterday? I told the story, back in the short sale days, I had a guy that just played the system. He just played the system. We sold this $1 million short sale in DC Ranch. The guy didn't lose his job, he had money, and what they did was, we need credit in two things as Americans, for the most part, we need credit for: houses and cars. Everything else, for the most part, is on a credit card or cash, right? So they took care of their car issue, they bought 2 new cars, they bought a place in Stonegate before they short saled their house, right? And they paid cash. Now, I'm trying to think, I don't remember what he did first, but anyway, but there was multiple offers. And I don't know, I think I told you it was $650 was the sales price, but so he offered $680, $30,000 more, $20,000 more, knowing that there's no way this house is gonna appraise. And even with getting paying cash, we made a contingent on an appraisal. So they got the deal because they were the best offer of the multiple
Right.
offers. He was banking on the fact that the house would appraise at $650, and then he'd have the seller lower the sales price. Well, guess what, guys? The appraisal came in at $670 at the sales price, and my buyer was livid, and he protested his own appraisal.
No way.
You thought it was too high.
Because he was banking on the fact that he paid more to get the deal, but it would be lower. I work with Kathy Lawler, works for the Realty Executive, probably the classiest lady I've ever worked with. And he says, well, I'm not paying it, you just tell the seller I'll cancel, I'm not paying it, I'm not paying a nickel more than $650, even though I mean, how do you make that phone call? You guys have all known, I'll defend you to anything that we can find on any issue,
Yeah.
but when we're wrong, it's just
Yeah.
really hard. I make this really nasty phone call, I say, Kathy, listen, we got a problem, my guy, the appraisal came in, but he doesn't believe in the appraisal, he wants to protest it. he wants to change the contract to $20,000 lower. And I'm waiting for her just to yell and scream and carry on,
Yeah.
and she said, well, let's see what we can come up with. Let's
Right.
just deal with it, let's see what we can come up with. She didn't focus on what the problem was, she focused on the solution. But that was a great lesson for me, she just, and
Because it wasn't her
my guy
fault.
was just sleazy, and they did the deal, and they lowered the price, and it was really, just had dirt all over it, you know?
There was a lot of that.
Not the only one to happen.
Yeah.
So, all right, Miss Leanne, what do you got?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I had a similar thing last year with an appraisal where a house went on the market, we had 2 seller offers plus a third that one was considering it, full price, appraisal comes in at 15,000 under asking price, and this was like, immediately, those had both of those, and it was out in Gilbert, I didn't meet the guy, but I did send my comps and everything to him. And looked at it, I'm like, I don't know where he's coming up with this. So the buyer, we couldn't come to terms, the seller needed the 15 grand and they weren't gonna come down, the buyer wasn't gonna come up. Go back on the market, immediately get 2 more offers. So this time I'm like, okay, I'm sending this appraiser the comps. I didn't say why the first buyer canceled in the letter. I just said, the first time we were on the market, we had 2 solid offers with a third wanting to put an offer in. This time we came back on the market, we got 2 more offers, both at full price. And I said, the market is telling us that this house is worth
X
this amount
dollars. Yeah,
of money.
absolutely.
Appraisal came back right at sales price.
Yeah.
And then, later I got an appraiser calling me after it sold, going, how did you get that house to appraise? Like, it's just.
So here's an experiment, if anybody has the goal to do this. We always talk about why houses sell and don't sell, and I think we'll all agree at the end of the day, it's always about price. And maybe it's about price in relation to condition or location or amenities and upgrades and all that stuff, right? But it's always about price. Would everybody somewhat agree on that?
Mhm.
Maybe even fully agree? But sellers don't always get it, right? Because sellers say, you're not doing the marketing, you're not showing it well, you're not doing this. So next time you have an opportunity and you want to prove to your seller about price, whatever the price is on the house, and you get a price adjustment, even if it's a minimal one, on purpose, accidentally on purpose, put it in the MLS wrong. So for example, if you're going from 800,000 and you're gonna lower it to 795, accidentally on purpose, make it $79,500, not $795,000. And see how many offers you get in an hour. You're not obligated to sell it, it was just an honest mistake, blah, blah, blah. And if that doesn't prove to your seller that it's about price, nothing will.
I think at the end of the day, that's true, but I think a lot of things affect getting potential buyers to the property that can impact the price. If you have good photography, if the condition of the house looks good, I think all of those things go into what the ultimate price is. Because if you've got crappy photos and nobody ever comes to look at it, it's not gonna sell for any, you're just not gonna get anybody there.
Right, well, getting to the property is one thing, right, I
Right.
agree. You have to list it properly, the MLS needs to, do you guys, when you put something in MLS, you pull out in different ways, by school district, by price range, by community, how many times you see people spelling Greyhawk improperly?
Yeah.
All the time.
Or McDowell Mountain Ranch with 2 Cs, or McCormick Ranch with, 1 C, or whatever the case may be, I mean, you spell,
Let's do a map search.
you just
Yeah, I
spell it
do.
wrong,
And
however, you know, however you do it, but if it's not put in right. Anyways, if everybody's got the goal to list a property for an hour,
Go for it,
for just put one less zero and see how many calls you get, it's pretty amazing, so.
So I have a question for Zeno, and seems like, obviously there's two major items that can potentially kill a deal more than anything. One is the inspection. And by the way, some of you, Sam, I think you got some, I did a co-op deal with Mary Slakey at Fidelity National Home Warranty. And I wrote, if any of you guys want it, it's been, I've seen some people in the office have come picked up packets, but I wrote a publication on the inspection process, which can be given, put in your buyer or seller packet, which is basically my 35 years of experience of going through inspections with buyers and sellers, where you can actually, where it actually, instead of you saying, guys, this is what's gonna happen, because you know, during the process of any transaction, whatever you're telling them, a lot of times you sound like Charlie Brown's teacher, you know, rah, 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 they just don't hear anything. But I had a deal where a very new agent who was so nice, and you always feel bad when you know you can manipulate an agent, and it's real hard not to work that to your seller's or to your buyer's advantage. But I mean, you know, if you have integrity and you have trust with each other, you don't do that. But she worked for the Seebach team, you know, Jeff Seebach, who's a good realtor, by the way. But she kept asking me questions about, and it was a very complicated transaction, the way we wrote it, and she didn't know how to interpret it. And I said, well, you know, I'll meet with you and I'll show you how to present this to your seller. And I said, you know, I think you should be talking about to your broker if you don't understand this. And she said, I can't even tell you how many times I've called my broker and I get no response. So anyway, she listed the property at $640. We walked into it the day it was listed, 8 offers. And my people were from, it's the first day I met them, they were from New York. And I'm going, guys, this is a 680 house. I don't know what in the heck happened here. This is easily all day long a 680 house. So the gal said, you know, we've already got 3 offers. My seller said, or my buyers go, you know what? We don't want to get in the middle of that. And so that deal fell, and I stayed in touch with her, and she called me and she said, Frank, she goes, I know, she goes, I had a chance to meet your buyers at that open house. They seem like very nice people, blah, 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 and we were cash. And she said, it looks like this deal's falling, and buyers getting cold feet, it's going back on the market. She goes, but I do want to let you know I'm calling everybody else too that had an offer on it. So I called my seller, I called my buyer, and I said, I think we need to do 680, 40,000 high, which I normally won't do that, but that's what it was worth, and they wanted the property. And she said, well, she goes, is that going to pose a problem? Because we decided we're not doing cash, we're going to do a loan. So anyway, and I said, well, it could, because he's going to focus on, the appraiser's going to focus on what it's listed at. 3 offers, 675, I found this out the day after. 675, 680 me, and 685 they took us. So the first appraisal came in at 680. Here's my question is in on. So I thought, sweet, we are right on, everything's, underwriter is in Michigan. Underwriter reviews it. Nope. I want more data from the, this was listed at 640, it was listed there for a reason, and we're not gonna give a loan on something that's that high over list price. And so we fought it for about a week, and so we got them to agree to do another appraisal. Next one comes in at 682. So here's my question. A lot of us think that appraisal comes in, we're good, but you still have an appraisal review process, correct?
Correct, yeah, the underwriter still goes through it.
Right, so if we, what is your recommendation, as we're talking about appraisals, what is your recommendation as far as, you know, when we say the appraisal came in at value, at what point are we told that as agents? After it's been through the appraisal review process?
No, typically we want to get that information out, the update out that the appraisal is back But if you look at the LSU, it says, have all appraisal conditions been met? And that's when we can check the boxes after the underwriter's actually reviewed it and has cleared it. Does that make
What
sense?
would
So-
prompt an appraiser not to accept the appraiser's opinion of value?
You know, a lot of times if there's a picture of something that, you know, is a defective part of the property that isn't really listed by the appraiser, or anything that comes up that would concern him, he can, you know, flag it for, you know, further inspection or what have you. But there have definitely been times where the appraiser comes back, appraiser says everything's good with the property, but the underwriter, you know, has a concern with it. I can't think of anything really off the top of my head right now, because I haven't
Does it
come
happen a
across.
lot?
No.
So
Really
here's a
does.
question for you guys. You have a listing, and you have an offer, and it doesn't appraise. The appraisal comes in lower. It doesn't make a difference what the price is. Comes in lower. Buyer or seller can't figure it out, so the deal goes south. Back on market, the next buyer comes along and says, why did it fall out? Question one is, what do you say? Okay, do you tell them it was based on the appraisal or whatever? And number two, is the seller or you obligated to disclose to the buyer that it fell out due to the appraisal, let them know what the appraisal was?
I would say the buyer wasn't able to meet the terms of the contract.
Okay? You talk about the appraisal? You?
I would say it's something you would need to disclose.
Cole, what do you do?
What's that?
Hello.
I'm trying to get
No,
out
you
line.
just say yes.
What do you do,
Nod and
Scott?
smile.
Scott, what do you do?
I tell them.
You tell the appraiser, what do you do?
I did what she
I thought I
said.
had-
They didn't meet the conditions of the contract.
So just understand that appraisal is an opinion of value, it's not a material matter. So you're not obligated to disclose it. So, but if you open up the can of worms that says, well, the appraiser didn't know, then it just prompts more questions. I think
Right.
that's a great answer. They just couldn't meet the terms of the lender's terms,
I wouldn't even say that, I'd say the terms of the contract.
or the contract, whatever.
Overall,
But-
broader is better.
But you are not obligated to disclose an appraisal, it's nothing more than opinion of value. If it's a conventional loan, because the next conventional loan is gonna be completely different, because you have a different appraiser. If it's FHA or VA, you're kind of stuck with that appraisal for 6 months.
Yep.
If you have a low appraisal on that house, and it falls through, that VA or FHA appraisal stays on that property for 6 months. So the next buyer that comes along, I don't know if they have to get another appraisal, or they can just tap into the case number, right?
Yeah, typically they can actually pull up the old appraisal. Yeah.
Right, so
tap
the buyer
the
doesn't
case
have, so the
number.
second buyer doesn't have to pay for the appraisal?
That, again, I haven't come across very recently, but
But just know
I
that
wanna
sticks
say-
with the it
yeah.
sticks in a file because it's a government loan, so that appraisal's already established for
I
6
think it
months.
has to be reviewed, doesn't it?
In other words, make the deal work.
Yeah, but what happens
Right.
if it's out with FHA, that all of a sudden they made improvements to the house? You know, so there's, I mean, there are certain circumstances I think that would require another appraisal.
right.
but-
Didn't they change that though, Sandy? Isn't it not? Because VA used to stick with the property for 6 months, I believe, and now, didn't they change that where it doesn't stay with the property anymore?
I haven't seen that, but they are basically redoing all guidelines for VA. and
How about
commercial.
FHA?
FHA is still the same.
Same thing.
It is?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought a lender had told me that was not.
What are they redoing for VA?
Well, everything. They're literally going through the VA handbook and adjusting a lot of different guidelines.
Well, do you remember back in the day when the seller couldn't pay for a lot of things? Now,
Right.
it's
No,
it's really
right.
open season, anybody,
It is.
I think the only thing the buyer who's doing the VA loan can't pay for is the termite inspection.
Right.
How stupid is that?
I got a
Like,
big
just
fight
of
about
all
that.
things to
Right.
pick and choose,
Right.
the termite inspection.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's a
That's right.
stupid thing, but,
I'm like, girlfriend, you know.
yeah, it just, so watch
Yeah.
this, so how about this one? You have a VA or FHA loan, and in your contract, buyer and seller agree that after the appraisal and after the home inspection is satisfied, the money becomes non-refundable. After the home inspection is satisfied, the money becomes non-refundable. They do an appraisal, and the appraisal comes in low, buyer and seller can't figure out and come to terms, and the buyer cancels. Does the buyer get his money back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And do you know why?
They always get
Can't
paid back.
But you just made in a contract that says money is non-refundable after the
Because it's
the
different.
inspection. Yeah, but why is it different?
Because it's a loan. It can't think of the word.
Are you talking about VA?
or if FHA.
The mandatory clause?
Exactly, it's federal law, whether they sign it or not, it's federal law, and in the contract it says that this is things, this, and that, unless it goes against federal law. And that's a federal law that a buyer cannot lose the money on, so you can make it non-refundable after the appraisal's been satisfied, but not based on the appraisal. Buyer on a VA loan cannot lose their money, based on appraisal of FHA or VA. And here's another one, come across this a lot. So the buyer and seller bicker and fight over the bidder. It's a nightmare, right? We've established that, but they get through it. Appraisal comes in, appraises the value. However, there's now lender required repairs. You gotta chip paint, you gotta some eaves you gotta fix. There's a broken piece of glass in the bathroom window or bedroom window. And the seller says, well, the buyer says you need to fix these, and the seller says, I'm not fixing anything more. We've already been through this process.
Right.
Well, that's wrong, because it's no longer a BINSR issue, it's a lender required issue. It's a whole separate line item, so you gotta be careful for that.
Goes up there.
Right, it's not a BINSR issue, it's a lender requirement, and these things are repaired, they will get their money back. Today, I think you tell me, it's very different than it was 10 years ago with what the requirements. There used to be loose wires, it didn't have a stove. That's one of my buyers, he calls it the hot thing in the kitchen. They didn't have a stove or loose wires, or, right now, really, they're just looking for safety.
Health and safety.
Health and safety,
Health and safety.
broken glass, chip paint, especially if it's a lead-based paint house, things like that.
Like frayed wires is still an issue. They'd have to get them capped and sealed.
So, I'm not sure if you heard my stories, I'm sorry if I repeat them. This back in the short sale days, it was when bank-owned property, it was a nightmare days. And buyers and sellers were doing anything and everything. So the guy knew he was getting foreclosed upon, or he milked it as long as he can. When he left, they took everything with him. They took the lighting fixtures, they took the toilet bowl, they took everything with them, right? We've all experienced this. A buyer was an FHA loan, where buyers comes in, he's getting an FHA loan. And we already know there's no stove, and they took all the ceiling fans, and there's just loose wires. So there's no seller, the bank's not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
The guy's not gonna get his loan
No.
unless those things are done, no one's gonna do it, right? So here's what buyers were doing. Buyers were doing before the appraisal, they were going up with a ladder, they were going to Home Depot getting caps, and they were doing it themselves.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had one guy, took his pickup truck, took his stove from his apartment, took it out, put it on his truck, put it in the house, plugged it in, got the appraisal done, took it out, put it down in his apartment.
God.
Wow.
I had a buyer of a house and they had one of those big Viking stoves. The stove had been removed. The buyer's lender refused to lend without a stove. I found one on Craigslist. We went and got it, put it in the house. It was one of those teeny tiny, it was really, really small, had a smooth top.
A two-burner, yeah.
And it had a crack in it, but it still functioned. And so I put it in, the appraiser came back in, got it. When my buyers moved in, I said, just throw that out at the curb and you're
Telling
done.
me the craziest things.
Those were the days.
We did the craziest things.
This is really interesting, but in BINSR litigation, if you look at NAR statistics, 77%, who do you think is the winner on 77% of BINSR litigation, buyer seller?
Buyer.
I
Buyer.
would think buyer would be, I guess.
And the reason is most buyers it's usually the buyer that brings it to BINSR litigation. But if you ever look at NAR's website, and if you ever want a stat for anything, they have a stats page and an information stats page that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, people write books about it, and all that stuff. It's crazy.
All right, last topic I want to bring up, and we can spend as much time as one of my favorite topics, lease purchases. Just tell you my opinion, okay? They're not illegal, that's a fact, they're not immoral, they're not ethical, but in my opinion, they just don't work. They just don't work. They're very difficult, and that's why I was, this morning I had a meeting with a new lady, and her first transaction was a lease purchase. And on the purchase contract, here's what it said, on the purchase contract, in additional terms and conditions, it said that tenants' rent payments, 50% of the tenant's rent payments shall be applied to buyer's down payment. Well, what the heck does that mean? We talked a lot about things. If you're gonna do it, just make the two separate contracts, two separate transactions, and please, my suggestion is do not tie the two together, because it makes it more complicated. But the problem is, the bigger problem is, when you do a purchase contract, it's a year, we have a year to go on this lease, on this, so it's a year closing, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. There's some potential problems with that, but there's nothing wrong with that. And then you do a lease agreement, there's nothing wrong with the lease agreement. The minute you tie the two together, they just get complicated. You're in breach of one, you're in breach of the other. So they're late on their rent, or they didn't pay their rent. But what does the rent have to do with the purchase contract? Right, I mean, it just creates a lot of potential problems. And you're probably the three longest standing realtors, and I'm sure you've done them over the years that have worked. They're
No.
just,
I've never had one.
I-
Never
Totally
there's a
open.
reason why the buyer
Never seen
can't
one.
qualify for a loan today.
Mhm.
There's a reason why,
Yeah.
right? So that's the first question. Why can't the buyer, well, we're expecting an inheritance. You know, my grandmother, well,
When my grandma dies,
But-
10 years.
yeah.
I know.
My
Is
grandmother's
she
only
sick?
55 years old and
Yeah.
perfect health and runs marathons, you know?
I'll tell you when it happens
Waiting for
more than not.
litigation.
It happens more than not when you have a tough market and you have sellers.
Right.
Sandy and I have had this conversation before. I've probably done in excess of 50 lease purchases in my career, and it's because I came from a high veteran market. And those people come, guess what, Mr. Carpin or Captain Carpin? We need you in Colorado Springs, Colorado from Luke, and I need you there in 2 weeks. And by the way, we don't have any base housing. We're all booked up with base housing and stuff like that. They call the realtor. Holy crap, house is going on the market. I got a report date in 2 weeks. I can't afford to stay in a hotel. Military transfers, you guys are brutal.
Yeah, we don't see it.
Julie, you know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So I got very astute at, and Sandy's exactly right. We always keep the two separate. And so we had a $20,000 non-refundable on a deal that Sandy kept saying, this is not gonna work, Frank, it's not gonna work, but here's what happened. My seller sold their house in Colorado Springs. It was under contract, not closed, and we made an offer on like 5 properties who would not accept a contract
With the condition.
with a contingency, even though, because they hadn't cleared inspection and appraisal yet. But she is working for Children's, she's a head pharmacist for Children's here. And she's 5 kids, 2 dogs. And so guess what she started doing? She's going, if I can't buy a house, I gotta rent one. And I said, yeah, I don't do rentals, so what she does, gets on Realtor.com, she sees this house, she calls me up, she goes, Frank, I talked to the realtor, told him we were working with you, but they said that the seller said that they would absolutely entertain, the house is vacant, they would absolutely entertain a lease purchase, and I just went, oh no, here we go. So we wrote that thing, and the seller said, I'll do it with $20,000 non-refundable. My buyer did it because they had nowhere to go. And so I wrote that thing. It took me 33 years of experience to write that thing. It took me 33 years of experience to get them out of it because the deal fell. And I got it 100% of their earnest money back. But to go with what Sandy said, I even think, could I have done that at 20 years? We'd have been in court. It took every bit of experience that I had to get them out of that.
So watch this, I'll give you an example.
It's brutal.
Buyer-seller relationship is
Never wanna do it
completely
again.
different from the tenant-landlord relationship.
It is.
Mhm.
So the buyer and seller agree that after inspections, buyer and seller agree that after inspections that the seller is no longer responsible for any repairs and the buyer will close no matter what condition the property is in at closing time. Okay, you could do that, nothing wrong with that. And they agree, it's a 6-month or a year, closing. So now the tenant takes occupancy. And the tenant says, hey, the stove broke, I need the landlord to fix it. Landlord says, I'm not fixing it, we already made an agreement. And the tenant says, I'm not asking you as the buyer, I'm asking you as the tenant, and you have to fix it. It's not what the seller signed up for, but it's what the landlord signed up
Yeah.
for, right? Just think about that. It just gets ugly. But in this case, this contract was written that the earnest deposit, the security deposit of the lease will transfer over to the, will be transferred over to the earnest deposit for the sale. Well, that means,
Oh.
and then it said, this is a question, then it said on the lease it said $2,000 earnest deposit, personal check to be deposited with, and they wrote title company. Will the title company take an earnest deposit on the lease?
Nope.
Of course not.
Nope.
Of course not, because they have nothing to do with the lease. I mean, the whole thing had so many, so just a lot to clean up and so on. So it's just my hot button. Not saying they don't work, they just very rarely work. It's not illegal, they're risky. There's a reason why AAR doesn't provide us with those documents. Pre-possession, we don't do. Post-possession we'll consider because at least the deal is done. So, and by the way, we had this discussion not too long ago, a lease purchase with an option takes on another whole realm of, because an option is nothing more
Than a
than the
lease.
buyer paying money for the option to purchase.
At a certain period of time.
And the buyer pays the money, whether he purchases or not, he pays that money. That's what an option is. Right of first refusal is, with the way we use it, the way we write it are two different things. So we just use words sometimes that we're not sure exactly what the true meanings are, and we're writing things in the contracts, and it just kind of gets us into trouble. What's the other one I was gonna say?
So what's the best way to say right of first refusal?
Well, tell me what you think it is first.
I would say that you're leasing the home, you've got a lease contract, and if the seller chooses to sell the home at the end of the lease term, buyer has the option.
Tenant has the option.
Tenant has the option to,
Say it.
yeah.
Have
to-
right of first refusal.
Have the right of
Okay,
first.
so let me tell you what I understand right of first refusal to be. Right of first refusal means like, I'm gonna deal with Frank, and I'm in first position, okay? And it's a contingency deal, and you come along and you have a better offer, and I have a right of first refusal. That means I have the right to outdo your offer, even though he wants to accept yours. So I have a contingency with Frank, it's contingent on getting my house sold, and my house has not sold yet. Right, so in our contract, it says, if another offer comes in, he's got the right to come back to me and say, see, now I have another offer I want to accept, you got 3 days to either, shit or get off the pot. Show me you can qualify and remove the contingency, or we agree to cancel the deal and allow you to accept your deal, right? And if you notice, our contingency does not use the words right of first refusal. But if he gives me a right of first refusal, all that means is I have a right to match your offer. I gave him 200, you gave him 210. I said, okay, Frank, I'll do the right of first refusal. I'll change my offer to 210. He has to accept it because that's a right of first refusal, and it's still on a contingency basis. He cannot get out of our deal. If you notice, our contingency does not state right of first refusal. So that's the difference. So here's what I would suggest, and it doesn't have a lot of weight. So you have a lease and you wanna, so in the lease agreement, it says that should the landlord decide to sell the house, that the tenant has the first option to purchase. Okay, in other words, the landlord or the seller has to come back to the tenant to give
me an
the
offer,
first right to make an offer.
Okay.
Okay? What if the landlord doesn't do it? Landlord says, hey, your lease is coming up the end of June, Frank, just let you know I sold it to Julie. Well, wait a second, we have an agreement, and it's in writing, and you agreed. Sue, Frank, sue me.
Yeah.
There's no meat to it.
See, I think there's a lot of meat to that. You sue for specific performance.
Good luck on that one.
If the
Good luck on
tenant
that one.
has the ability to buy, that tenant,
Good luck.
no, I disagree.
Good luck. No.
Good luck depending on who you have it as an attorney, and there's one thing
Good luck on
too.
the cost of doing it to buy the house, it's going nowhere.
Yeah.
There's never a court that, in my opinion, that'll ever make a seller sell it or buyer buy. What's the damages?
Here's the thing, I 100% agree with you. It's very difficult in the court of law to ever get a judge to agree to make a seller sell a house. However, if there was a prior agreement and he takes offer number 2, he's got full intention to sell the house, so tenant absolutely has, if he has in writing, the ability
Yeah.
to.
You said it's impossible to make somebody sell a house. The courts will never make anybody sell a
That's
house.
correct, absolutely. So here's the other thing, and this is one thing that, you guys know Tom Noble?
Nope.
Great guy, he's a great teacher. He and I got into it a little bit over the first right of refusal, unless it's stated in the first right of refusal, does not have a price matching option. Or that is, so for example, Sandy brings me an offer at, his house is in New York, is on the market. He brings me an offer and says, seller, my house is on the market, it's aggressively priced, it's not under contract, I'm gonna make an offer at your house, on your house at $250. But I'm gonna allow you to keep the house on the market, accept offers, as long as you give me 24, 48, 72 hour first right refusal, whatever it is.
UCB.
And if you, exactly, that's a UCB situation. So what happens is then offer number 2 comes in, no contingency at $255, $5,000 over Sandy's offer. And seller does correct thing, or seller's agent goes back to Sandy, says, Sandy, you've got 72 hours to remove your contingency and proceed with the transaction with no contingency if you can prove that you can do that without selling your house. Otherwise, you're out. And so Tom Noble said that if buyer number 1 wants the house, he has to match the price of buyer number 2. Absolutely not.
Depends on how it's written.
Unless,
Are you using the words right of first refusal, or are you using the word contingent upon?
both.
Well, that's contradicting to each other.
No, it's not.
I would think if you
No,
use
it's
the word
not.
of right, if you use the word right of first refusal, then I would have the right of that contingent offer to match offer number 2's price and stay in first position.
The first right of refusal is primarily put there because of a contingency. So when you properly write a first right of refusal, or if you write a first right of refusal based on the sale of a house, it has to have verbiage on both.
Right. So in your case, we're at 250, and the second offer comes in at 255, and we've agreed that you're giving me a right of first refusal. So that means that either I could just cancel the deal and get my money back.
Correct. That's option one.
I could, if I want to stay in that first position, I have to now match the 255
Absolutely
price.
not. No.
That's
There's-
exactly what right of first refusal is.
Now,
And I will argue with Tom.
100%, I'll go to court with you on that.
I will argue with Tom Noble all day long.
No, Tom Noble's the one that said that.
That's exactly the right of first, you're giving me
No.
the right to match the second offer. In sports, they do it all the time.
Right of first refusal
When
means that
a
you're
ball player
giving-
has a right of first refusal, and another organization wants to do it, the
The original team.
that is on the contract can match the offer, that's exactly the right of first refusal is.
It has to be.
We've had this argument once before,
I know, but it's-
I don't even know where.
But it's gotta be specifically, so let me tell you, the best way to write a first right refusal, if you're representing the seller, is if you say, if in fact offer B comes in at a price higher than what we've agreed to, for you to
Buyer has the right.
exercise your option of purchase, you have to match. Then if that verbiage is not in there, then the first right of refusal is basically saying, we're giving you the right to either accept your deal or refuse it. The refusal part of it means that Sandy can, if he's going, bro, I just can't qualify for this house without selling my house, I'm gonna refuse the deal and let you move forward with the
But
second.
that's just a regular contingency, we don't have.
Right.
No.
That's how it's written right now.
I don't understand.
No.
What's going on? He's saying
Okay.
one thing, and you're saying
I know.
another. Where's the truth in this
Well-
actual circumstance? What is the actual matter of fact?
I would
Arm
suggest
wrestle
that-
for it.
I would
No, I
suggest
mean,
that-
what is it? Because we've got two really conflicting.
I would suggest that you never
Right,
put
chapter
out the
desk.
words right of first refusal. If you notice our buyer contingency, then it's those words, it takes on another whole meaning, it just does.
So-
We can argue all day long, I
I know
think
you
I'm
can.
right, and he thinks he's right, and that's okay. And I'll get you an answer, but all I'm saying is, the right of first refusal just takes on a whole nother.
Because if you find yourself in that position, you need the real answer. And right now, there is no
You
answer.
come to me for that
Yeah.
time, but we never, how often do you see a contract with right of first refusal? We really don't.
I've never written it in a contract.
No.
So I'll just, and I
In other
know,
words, we're spending a lot of time on something that's a uniform.
yeah, so I do have one question, and we can drop it for sure. But if you don't have a first right of refusal, so say Julie makes an offer contingent on your house that you have listed, correct?
Right.
If there's no first right of
Contract
refusal
taking-
and you get contract number 2, without a first right of refusal, she's done.
No, the
No, the
contingency,
whole
no, the whole
contingency.
contingency, okay, listen.
Read the
This is
contingency.
the fact, so there's no, there's clarity here. Here's
Oh,
what the-
God, he's standing up.
here's what the buyer contingency says, there's two sections to the buyer contingency. She has a listing, I am writing an offer on Leanne's house, and it's contingent. Either it's contingent on me, right?
Getting
which is
an
I'm a buyer,
offer.
getting an offer and then getting an offer and closing the deal.
Right.
Or it's contingent on, I've already got an offer.
Right.
It's contingent on closing.
Correct.
We're talking about getting it sold and closing, two things. So I said, Leanne, I'm gonna buy your house, we come to a price, $100,000 would be great, but it's contingent on two things. I have to get an offer on my house
Right.
by June 1st.
Right.
And I need to close the deal by July 1st. Okay, that's the deal. So come May 1st or June 1st, if I don't have an offer, the contract is deemed canceled.
Done.
It says it. It automatically says it. If we want to continue our relationship, we have to change that July 1st because the contract says if I do not get an offer by July 1st, our contract
June
is
1st.
deemed
Yeah.
canceled. It doesn't say may cancel, shall cancel, could cancel. It is deemed canceled. So for us to keep our deal in place, right? Guys, the story I'm telling you with the father and the son and the mission, this 3 times has happened to us. So we have to do something to extend it or not extend it. That's number 1. Number 2, during that time frame before June 1st, she now gets an offer from Frank. And it doesn't make a difference if it's better or worse. It becomes an acceptable offer. It could be less money, it could be cash, it could be less money with no contingencies. It just has to be acceptable. The way, if you don't change the standard word, what it says is this. She's got to come back to me and say, Sandy, I've got another offer that we would like to accept. Therefore, I've got 5 days.
3, I thought.
5 days. 5 days. In 5 days, I have to do one of two things. I gotta prove to Leanne, I'm gonna drop the contingency, and I'm gonna prove to her financially from the lender that I can buy this house. Or, I agree to cancel our deal, and my earnest money will be refunded to me.
Right.
That's what the contingency says.
Right.
No right of first refusal, nothing. Okay, we all agree on that?
Yep.
Okay, here's what I'm saying, Scott, on the
Mhm.
right of first refusal.
Mhm.
On that same deal, we have a right of first refusal on this contingency. So we're doing our deal, and I don't get my house sold by June 1st.
Mhm.
She gets an offer from Frank, and
Mhm.
Frank's offer is $10,000 more than mine, okay? I've got a right of first refusal, which means I have the right to match his offer.
Right.
And if I match his offer, I am still in first position with my
I
contingency
understand
until
that.
June 1st. After June 1st, if I don't get my house under contract, all bets are off.
She can do whatever she wants.
Right.
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 Okay.
And her, the only thing
No,
that I'll say.
I don't want, let's not talk about this anymore. No, it doesn't mean anything.
No, it does, because let me just tell you, so after that meeting, one of the broker managers from West USA came to me and said, Frank, you're 100% right. And she said, I'm calling the Arizona Board of Realtors because he's teaching it incorrectly. There is no, you do not have to match to.
All right, so you're saying 2 different things again.
Now, it's only down, it's only one, it's only 2, Sandy's 100% right. The only thing that I'm saying is that to exercise your first right of refusal, you do not have to match the secondary offer. So here's the other, and I'll just tell you,
You say it again, the way our.
I don't have to come up 10 grand if someone else's offer comes in after mine and I've got first right of refusal.
correct.
If you have it, but if you don't, then you just have a regular buyer.
Then the deal's over, then I can take whatever I
Right.
want.
And by the way, and just on a side note, if you're in that position, I have to tell you, 5 days is, if you're the listing agent, you never give the buyer 5 days, that's way too long. I'm not sure
No
that
way.
Frank's gonna be waiting 5 days for an answer, I may not get the deal. The buyer needs less than 2 hours.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Because here's the reality, either I can or I can't,
Mhm.
right? Either I can, I already know that I can't buy this house until I sell my house, I already know that. I don't need 5 days to think about it, all you're giving me is 5 more days to sell it, and in that 5 days, you might lose Frank, right? That's number one. So I don't need 5 days to know something I can't do. If I am able financially to do the deal, I don't need 5 days to think about it, because trust me, my wife and I have thought about this and lost sleep over what happens if we're in that situation. Give me less than 24 hours. Frank, I'm put you on hold for 24 hours because it's right of first, a contingency, and in 24 hours I give you.
So you just amend
Correct.
the,
And there's also another danger in this buyer contingency. It's really poorly written. It's really dangerous. And our same transaction, so we have this, I now get a contract. Okay, I now get a contract from Scott buying my house. Great news, Leanne, I'm under contract. Leanne, seller, has the right to review and disapprove that contract. Because they have a right to know that maybe it's on a
Yeah,
contingency.
you said get rid of that.
The only reason why I'm buying this house, the only reason why I'm selling my house is to buy this house.
Right.
So now, I'm under contract with the contingency. I am now fully under contract with Scott. Contingency or not makes no difference, I'm fully under contract. And, better yet, there is no contingency. There is no contingency, it's a
Just
straight
that
up
contract,
cash
yeah.
deal, 30-day close. She still has the right to say no. And she says, no, I don't accept it, right? I've got, and you're canceling our deal, and I just sold my house to Scott with no place to go.
Get rid of that.
Does she have to have a reason?
Nope,
to
well,
said
disapprove?
it doesn't make a difference. I
You said
don't-
to strike that.
Yeah, let me tell you what's happening out there, I see it slowly. Compliments of Delbert Rounds, if you know him. Well, think about this, okay?
Dell's gonna see this and go, what the f-?
I'm under contract, no, this is a great discussion. I'm under contract with a contingency, okay? Frank knows it's under contract. Frank doesn't want to force the issue, so Frank and Leanne make a deal. It doesn't make a difference what it is, they make a deal. And Frank says, Leanne, here's what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna sit in the sidelines, and one of two things are gonna happen. Just wait, we're gonna wait till June 1st, when the deal, we're not gonna wait till June 1st, I'm gonna give you the deal now. No, we're gonna wait till June 1st, because
Right.
it's deemed canceled, there's
Right.
no argument.
Done.
And here's the reason why. If Frank comes up to Leanne and says, I got an offer, and she comes back to me, there's a possibility that I can release the contingency and so I can buy the house. Frank's out. If he waits till June 1st, now, right, and then they can accept the deal. What happens if Scott comes along before June 1st and gives me that offer? Great, Leanne, I got my house sold, we're moving to the next contingency, and she looks at the document and said, I disapprove. We're out, I just sold my house to him, and she made the deal with Frank. Does that make sense?
It does, but that does not happen very often.
It might happen.
We're
Two
dealing with
words.
unicorns today.
2 words.
Bill Rounds.
Dell. No, I mean, but think about that scenario.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly
If you
can
think
happen.
that's unicorn, you haven't been a broker or an
Sure,
owner for
that's
15
it.
years. You see that shit all the time.
I have a procurement cost question.
Yeah. Let's change the subject.
You
That's why we-
need somebody, and for me, I met the new nail lady yesterday, and I'm sitting there on my phone, working with, the apps and stuff, trying to get this appointment to be confirmed. And she's like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a realtor, and she's like, are you not working today? Because those are my workout clothes. I'm like, I hate that. So they do that all the time, I'm like, no, I work all the time, actually. I'm just, in between appointments, I'm just gonna do video a house for an out-of-town client. Oh, okay. And she's like, well, there's this condo I really like, and what do you think? And she has like a printout from like an open house, and she goes, what do you think? And I go, well, I need to, I can't just give you let you know yes or no, I need to look at and do comps. I'm like, what's your email, what's your phone number? Okay, I'll do comps, I'll send it to you information tonight. She's like, oh, and I have a house to sell too, in Gilbert, but it's in my friend's name because I want my husband, that divorce isn't done. Okay, fine, we'll worry about that later. And I asked her what's the address in her house too, so I got that all that. Then that night, so I went home and I just sent her, there was only like 3 in that condo complex that had been sold, and it'd been on the market since February 2nd. So I'm like, well, it's been sitting there a while, but it's under 200,000. So she's like, well, Nicole, thing is, I got that listing from one of my clients. She's a listing agent. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, all right. Well, do you think you're gonna buy it? And she's like, well, I don't know, but I don't want to make her mad. And so I said, oh, okay. I go, have you looked at any other condos in the area? She's like, no. And I said, okay. I go, well, and then that's kind of where we dropped it.
So she saw this condo with the listing.
She has the listing. She has,
From her.
Did she physically
Has she
see
been
it?
I don't
in the
know.
condo?
I don't know. She may have. I'll have to ask that question.
Right, let's assume she has.
Let's say she
If she
has.
hasn't, then all bets are off.
Right.
Let's assume she has.
Okay.
When did she see it?
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Okay. I just don't know if.
Security cause is never cut and dry. There's
But that's what
so many
because I don't wanna
variables.
step on anyone's toes.
I can prove a case that, you know, I showed you this house and 3 weeks later you worked from somebody else and I can show procuring cars. I can show procuring cars that you showed me house on Monday, you worked from somebody else on Tuesday and you were not procuring cars. There's
Well-
so many variables in so many situations.
Right, and it gets
It's
even
not the
stickier
person,
because
but-
it's not her money, it's her boyfriend's money, who has cash.
And don't you say it's a chain of events?
Well, there's a chain of
Yes,
events,
an
it's time
unbroken
consuming.
chain of
Her husband, his husband doesn't know about the house.
If they make a decision to buy, there's so many variables. You know,
Yeah,
with,
You guys
with
were-
Helene Cass.
I know,
Yeah.
but
There's-
she
there's
was
so many
like,
variables.
she was so funny, she goes, wow, you really jumped on that, you were really fast.
My
You're so
suggestion
good."
is just go forth and show and work with her, show her other properties.
That's right,
And
I'm dropping it off today.
Show her,
Already
other- show,
printed them off, I emailed her, she hasn't,
show her other properties, make sure you visit the property she likes.
Doesn't-
And keep a chain of communication.
Yeah, just make sure you show the, and even if she's not gonna go see the house with you that you already saw, you go see it. Get your name registered in that one.
okay, all right, I'll get more
And
information.
Sandy will tell you this, in procuring cars, because there's no, it's so ambiguous at times that, remember, you're typically in front of a committee
Of
that's
your peers.
making that
Peers.
decision.
We're all
So,
in the same situation.
we've been, in professional standards, we've had 3 of us going, absolutely, commission goes to you, and you got 2 people going, goes
Well,
to
and
Sandy.
then the,
So-
you know, the condo's been there, sitting there since February, under 200,000 in Scottsdale. Like, obviously, and I go, you know, I don't wanna start advising her yet, but I mean, I'm looking at it going, well,
Well, the first thing you wanna tell her is don't have any more communication with anybody but you.
right,
Go visit the property.
Right.
Show her other properties.
okay,
Yeah, when did you see the property? How did you see the property?
Okay.
How long ago? Was there any communication since you see the property with the other agent? There's so many factors.
okay.
There's so many factors.
okay.
So,
But definitely establish communication between the 2 of you.
Oh, I already have, I already got her cell phone, we even texted, she called, I thought she was just gonna blow me off, she called me last night.
and
and said,
communication
"Hey."
by itself is not a determining cause, but it's
Right,
another
but it
added
helps.
feature.
Right,
Absolutely.
right, she's like, oh my gosh, Nicole, great, she's like, but I actually, it's one of my clients, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm one of your clients too, you know? But I said, okay, no problem, I
Does the
go,
buyer broker help in the situation?
No.
No?
and I go, well, why don't we look at other condos too, because you only saw that one condo, and if you really wanna be in this area, I go, let me do a search, and I already sent it to her, but I don't think she's opened it yet, and that's why I printed
So
this
Nicole, let me
out.
ask you a question, go step back. So, she saw the condo?
I don't know,
Oh,
and I'm gonna say
She
maybe.
learned about it by.
By
listening
another
to
client, another
Oh.
client's a listing agent. Well, it's actually her husband and her husband, it's 2 people with the same last name, assuming husband and wife. So, but, and it was this, Rick, it was a Plano, it wasn't even the
What was the
printout.
question?
It
A buyer
wasn't even
broker. So
this,
here's
it
what a
was
buyer
even
broker
this.
is. A buyer broker is exactly the opposite.
So I don't know
of
if
a
she's seen it,
PR listing
she may
agent.
have.
That's all it is.
But-
It's a services agreement. It's exactly the
But it's not
opposite.
even her buying it.
Of a listing
Yeah.
agent to the seller, a
Mhm.
buyer broker
Yeah.
is to a buyer.
Mhm.
Okay? If
You know
you,
what I mean?
I have
But
a
I
listing
don't wanna
agreement
be-
with you,
Okay.
and you sell this house on your own, if you don't involve me, if you don't get me involved and all that stuff, and you decide to sell it to your sister, you know what? You owe me a commission.
Right, you get paid.
I have a buyer broker agreement
Right.
with Leanne, and she buys a house from another person, she owes me money.
Right.
Now, whether I'm gonna collect it or not, or
Right.
whether, that's another whole story, but that's all it is. Has nothing to do with representation, and has nothing, it's just a personal services agreement, the 2 are completely.
Sandy, do you, so there was an attorney that sat on our board, which I love this illustration on procuring cause. He'd always say, think of your buyer, you're the husband, the buyer's your wife, and you're going into your honeymoon suite, and you sweep up your wife, and you walk her across the threshold of the honeymoon, of your honeymoon door, your honeymoon suite. That's typically, now there's extenuating circumstances, who got them the
That's no longer
information, stuff like
procured
that.
cause.
No, I'm
You by
not.
yourself going through the.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's typically, who shows the property is typically who, and now, keep in mind, I'm just not throwing this out there, I was 12 years on professional standards, I heard, not hundreds, obviously, thank God, but probably, well, close to 100 of these cases. And it usually came down to who actually showed the property. But,
It depends. It's just-
Yeah.
no, it's a very
So-
depends.
So I had one last year, I showed my buyers the property, they ended up buying a different one that they turned into a rental. Then they didn't tell me, they kept going back to the first one at open houses. Kept going back to it, went back 2 or 3 times. And then they call me and they say, we wanna put an offer on that one. We wanna go move into that one ourselves.
Right.
And we've been back and we've seen it 2 or 3 times on the open house. And we wanna go back and look at it again today at this time. And I'm like, I can't be there.
Right.
I said, that's okay, we'll just call the other agent, cause she's.
Cause we've been talking to her all the time.
So I called the other agent and said, look, I can be there 2 hours later, would you just wait and let me go show it to them? And she ends up showing it to them. So then I ended up just calling and saying, all right, they wanna write an offer, I showed it to them, initially. I know you've been there for the open houses, can we split the commission? That was where I just decided, I'm not gonna get into, who's who. We both done work, and so we ended up just splitting the commission and going.
Perfect,
Better than fighting.
perfect.
Better than getting 0.
Sandy, let me just bring one up here, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, because this was one of the most interesting cases that I've ever had. So, buyer, Realtor number 1 was suing for commissions, saying that he was procuring cause, fourplex, right? It's an investment. He sends his buyer, his investor buyer, a copy of MLS of the new listing that comes up. They go over and look at it, and buyer says, I love it. Give us a couple of days and we'll tell you whether or not we want to buy it or not, okay? Buyer agent is foreign, has a family emergency in Mexico City, flies back to Mexico City, goes dark, goes dead, right? And I take that back on just one thing. They wrote an offer, it didn't fly. So he goes to Mexico City, he goes dark, right? House sells to somebody else, they're pissed. The buyer's pissed because they feel like they were unrepresented, they feel like they were abandoned, and abandonment, is an ethics violation. So anyway, what happened, they thought everything was dead. All of a sudden they find out, boom, they're looking at a Homes Illustrated magazine, it's back on the market. So they're going, holy smokes. They attempt to call the realtor, still dark. They call Jerry Trent, who's a listing realtor. Jerry, I don't know if you remember us, we made the first offer a month and a half ago. We can't get a hold of our realtor, can you show us the property? Jerry Trent says, well, sure. They go to the property, they fall in love with Jerry Trent, great guy, he's kind of an old investor guy. He lists a lot of small investment properties and strip malls and stuff like that. And so they said, we love you, we have no buyer agency agreement with this guy, we can't find him. They write the deal, it closes. Somehow or another, buyer agent number 1 comes back and starts making contacts to all his clients and stuff like that, finds out those people went back and bought the house. Now he's suing for procuring cause. Okay, you've got abandonment, you've got, probably a number of other violations there, completely unprofessional, misrepresented the buyer, all that stuff. I'll tell you how that came out. That's why I was telling, when I said to Sandy, I said, there's a jury of your peers there. We ended up splitting the baby, which I know that they hate to do. They split it because half of the committee said procuring cause was buyer agent number 1 because he introduced the property and he showed it to him and wrote the first contract, regardless of what happened afterwards. The other part of the committee said absolutely not. And they couldn't come to an agreement. So that's how arbitrary and how ambiguous procuring cause can be. So I think, what would you,
It's got to be more details to that, but.
There's not many more details.
There's a
It's pretty
right
easy.
that, I don't think the first agent would be entitled to it, in my opinion.
100% agree.
Abandonment, there's time constraint, he didn't make the decision to buy, there's a whole bunch of things. Just because she takes away through the threshold does not, in by itself, give him concurrent cars. In it by itself, it's just so many other variables.
Sure, 100%, yeah.
All right,
It's like-
all right.
I make you happy.